Deep in the outer rim of Zephyrian space, the massive monitoring station Outpost Omega-7 floated like a metallic spider among the stars. Its sensor arrays stretched for kilometers, constantly scanning the void for any sign of movement or threat. For the past 50 years, nothing had surprised the Empire's most advanced early warning system. Sensor operator Velthar had been staring at the same boring displays for 6 hours straight. The night shift was always quiet, just the usual cosmic background radiation and the occasional merchant vessel requesting passage through Imperial space. He was about to grab another cup of bitter stimulant when every alarm in the station began screaming at once. What in the seven hells? Velthar's clawed hands flew across his console as readings flooded his screens. Something was happening at grid reference 447 Delta, right at the edge of their territorial boundary. The space around that coordinate was bending, twisting in ways that made his compound eyes water. Then it happened. Reality seemed to tear open, like fabric, and something slipped through. The vessel that emerged defied everything Velthar had learned in his 20 years of military service. It wasn't built. It looked grown, its surface flowing like liquid metal that had been frozen in the shape of pure speed. The hull reflected starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly, as if the ship existed in more dimensions than the universe should allow. Admiral Corex to the command center immediately. Velthar's voice cracked as he hit the emergency broadcast. His tentacles were shaking as he tried to make sense of the impossible readings flooding his instruments. Within minutes, Admiral Corex burst through the command center doors, his usually perfect uniform disheveled from being roused from sleep. The grizzled veteran had commanded frontier stations for 40 years and thought he'd seen everything the galaxy had to offer. One look at the main display changed that assumption forever. "By the ancient gods," Corex whispered, his 4 eyes widening as he studied the mysterious vessel. "What are we looking at, operator?" "Unknown, sir. It just appeared. No hyperspace signature, no dimensional fold traces, no subspace disturbance. It's like the ship was always there and we just suddenly noticed it." The Admiral moved closer to the primary sensor station, his scaled hands gripping the console edge. The ship on their screens looked nothing like any design in their extensive databases. The Empire had catalogued vessels from over 300 different species across the galaxy, but this thing belonged to none of them. "Energy readings," Corex demanded. "That's the problem, sir. There are no energy readings. The ship's hull is reflecting our scans, but we're detecting 0 power signatures. No reactor core, no engine emissions, no life support systems. According to our instruments, that ship is completely dead." "Impossible. How is it maintaining position without thrusters?" Velthar's voice dropped to a whisper. "Sir, I don't think it's maintaining position. I think space is maintaining it." Before the Admiral could process that disturbing statement, more alarms began wailing. The unknown vessel was moving, not through space, but with it, like a predator swimming through an ocean of stars. Its speed was increasing exponentially, heading directly toward the heart of Imperial territory. "Battle stations!" Corex roared. "Get me a direct line to Fleet Command. Mobilize the 47th Battle Group immediately." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as dozens of operators began coordinating the largest military response the E sector had seen in decades. The 47th was the Empire's elite rapid response force, 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, and the massive dreadnought Sovereign's Wrath. If this unknown vessel posed a threat, they would be ready. "Sir, the 47th is forming up at Rally Point Epsilon," reported Communications Officer Theximar. "Admiral Zeklon is requesting permission to open fire if the vessel doesn't respond to hails." Corex nodded grimly. The Empire's standard first contact protocol was simple: identify yourself or be destroyed. They hadn't conquered 17-star systems by being diplomatic. "Tell Admiral Zeklon to—" Corex's words died in his throat as he stared at the main display. The impossible ship had stopped moving. It hung in space like a predator studying its prey, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, Corex felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood: pure, absolute terror. Then, without warning or explanation, the vessel simply wasn't there anymore. Not destroyed, not departed, just gone as if it had been erased from reality itself. The space where it had been showed no trace of its existence, no residual energy, no debris. Even the gravitational disturbances it had been causing vanished. Instantly. "Sensor sweep, full spectrum analysis," Corex shouted. But his operators were already working frantically at their stations. "Nothing, sir," Velthar reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. "It's like the ship was never there at all." Within hours, the Empire's greatest scientific minds were analyzing the sensor logs, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Professors from the Imperial Academy, military engineers, and even the mysterious researchers from the Department of Xenological Studies all reached the same impossible conclusion. They had encountered something beyond their understanding, something that treated the laws of physics like mere suggestions. And worse, it had vanished before they could react, leaving them with the terrifying knowledge that they were no longer alone in ways they couldn't comprehend. In the depths of space, something had announced its presence, and then disappeared like a ghost, leaving the mighty Zephyrian Empire feeling suddenly very small and very vulnerable. The bridge of the Teguk was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Lee stood at the center of a sphere of pure energy, holographic displays floating around him like fireflies made of light. The ship itself seemed to breathe with alien technology, its walls pulsing with a soft blue glow that matched the rhythm of space itself. "Captain, we're picking up massive fleet movements in Sector 7, Lieutenant Park announced, her hands moving through the air as she manipulated three-dimensional star charts. The data flowed around her fingers like liquid starlight, showing the positions of hundreds of Imperial warships. Lee watched the tactical display with the patience of a predator. The Teguk hung invisible in the void, its quantum phase shift generators bending light and space around the hull. To any observer, they were nothing more than empty space, a ghost ship sailing through an ocean of stars. "Show me their formation." "Patterns," Lee commanded softly. The hologram expanded, revealing the true scope of the Zephyrian Empire's military might. Massive dreadnoughts the size of cities moved in perfect formation, escorted by swarms of smaller vessels that glittered like deadly insects. Each ship bristled with weapons capable of cracking planets, their hulls scarred from countless conquests. But Lee had seen this dance before. 3 months of careful observation had taught him everything about Imperial tactics. They were efficient, brutal, and completely predictable. "Their advance fleet is already past the Kepler Nebula," reported Tactical Officer Jung from his station. His young face was grim as he traced the enemy's route. "At current speed, they'll reach our first colony worlds in 6 standard months." Lee nodded slowly. The Empire's expansion pattern was like watching a virus spread across the galaxy. They would arrive at a system, demand immediate surrender, and then systematically strip away everything that made a civilization unique. Those who resisted were eliminated. Those who surrendered became slaves. "Sir, we're receiving encrypted transmissions from their command ships," Communications Specialist Han announced, her cybernetic implants glowing as she interfaced directly with the ship's quantum receivers. "They're discussing something called Protocol Omega." Engineer Kim looked up from his station, where streams of stolen Imperial data flowed across multiple screens. His fingers paused in their work as he processed the new information. "Captain, I've been analyzing their historical records. Protocol Omega isn't just conquest, it's complete elimination." The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of advanced technology. Lee stepped closer to Kim's workstation, where horrifying images flashed across the displays. Entire worlds reduced to ash, space habitats crushed like eggs, billions of lives snuffed out simply because they existed in the Empire's path. "Show me the Veltaran system," Lee said quietly. The display shifted to show a barren star system where 3 planets once supported thriving civilizations. Now only asteroids remained, slowly orbiting a dying sun. The Veltarans had been artists and philosophers, their crystal cities among the most beautiful in the galaxy. The Empire had ground them to dust in less than a week. "The same pattern every time," Kim continued, his voice heavy with disgust. "First contact, demand for surrender, then systematic extermination. 17 species in the past century alone, men, women, children. It doesn't matter to them. Lieutenant Park pulled up another display showing the Empire's current target list. Sir, they've already identified our outer colonies. Settlement Prime, New Sol, the mining stations around Tau Ceti, they're all marked for Protocol Omega. Lee's jaw tightened as he stared at the list. Those weren't just strategic positions to him. They were home to millions of human families. Children playing in artificial parks, couples sharing quiet dinners, elderly grandparents telling stories of Earth to wide-eyed youngsters who had never seen their ancestral world. Captain, Jung spoke up from the tactical station. Their advance. Scouts have crossed into the neutral zone. First contact is estimated in 48 hours. The Empire's arrogance was breathtaking. They moved through space like they owned it, never bothering to hide their intentions or mask their approach. Why would they? For 300 years, no species had ever successfully resisted their expansion, but the Empire had made one fatal assumption. They believed they were the apex predators in this galaxy. Lee walked to the massive viewport that dominated the forward section of the bridge. Beyond the transparent aluminum, Imperial ships moved through space like schools of mechanical fish, their running lights creating patterns against the starfield. They had no idea they were being watched by something far more dangerous than they could imagine. Status of the Shadow Fleet? Lee asked without turning around. All 37 vessels are in position and maintaining stealth protocols, Park reported. The Hanyang, Busan, and Incheon have infiltrated their rear formations. The Sol is shadowing their command ship. They still have no idea we're here. Engineer Kim activated another display, showing the true scope of human presence in the region. While the Empire saw empty space, the reality was far different. Human ships moved like phantoms through their formations, gathering intelligence, mapping defenses, preparing for what was to come. Phase 1 is complete, Lee announced to his crew. We know their numbers, their tactics, and their intentions. They want to treat our people like cattle for slaughter. He turned back to face his officers, and for a moment, they saw something, in their captain's eyes, that would have terrified the Empire far more than any weapon. Prepare Phase 2. It's time to show them what it feels like to be hunted. The Taeguk began to move deeper into Imperial space, its advanced drives producing no detectable signature. Around them, the enemy fleet continued their confident advance toward human territory, unaware that death itself was swimming silently through their ranks. In the depths of space, the Watchers had become wolves, and the hunt was about to begin. The Imperial Command Center on Zephyr Prime had never seen chaos like this. Admiral Korex stood before a wall of screens that painted a picture of systematic failure across the entire Empire. His scaled hands gripped the edge of the command console so tightly that his claws left marks in the metal. Admiral, we have another incident, Communications Officer Thexmar announced, her voice cracking with stress. The 23rd Fleet attempted a routine hyperspace jump to the Kepler system. They never arrived. Korex's 4 eyes narrowed as he studied the report. Explain. Sir, they initiated jump sequence normally, but something went wrong mid-transit. Their navigation computers simply stopped working. The entire fleet dropped out of hyperspace 3 sectors away from their destination, completely lost. The E. Admiral felt ice forming in his veins. The 23rd Fleet consisted of 47 warships, including 2 massive dreadnoughts. For their navigation systems to fail simultaneously was impossible, unless something had made it happen. That's not all, sir, Thexmar continued, her tentacles dancing nervously across her console. Fortress Station Vel Prime reports complete. System failure. Their planetary defense grid went dark for 17 minutes. No power, no shields, no weapons. Then everything just came back online like nothing happened. Korex stared at the tactical display dominating the center of the command room. Across the 3-dimensional map of Imperial space, red warning markers blinked like infected wounds. Communication blackouts, navigation failures, power grid collapses, all happening with no pattern he could understand. Sir, the pattern suggests. Coordinated attacks, offered tactical analyst Vexran, his insectoid features twisted with confusion. But we can't detect any enemy presence. It's like ghosts are sabotaging our systems. Ghosts don't exist, Korex snapped. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it anymore. Suddenly, every alarm in the command center began screaming. Sensor Chief Zolkar's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Contact. Unknown. Vessel bearing 047, distance 2 light minutes. The main display shifted to show the mysterious ship that had haunted their nightmares for weeks. It hung in space near the industrial world of Kethlon like a predator studying its prey. The vessel's impossible design hurt to look at. Surfaces that seemed to fold in on themselves, engines that produced no detectable emissions, hull plating that reflected light in ways that shouldn't be possible. Lock weapons, Corex commanded. This time we don't let it escape. But even as the targeting systems began to engage, the ship simply faded away like smoke in the wind. Not destroyed, not departed. Just gone, leaving empty space where it had been moments before. Sir, emergency transmission from Sector Command. Vexmar's voice was barely controlled panic now. Multiple sightings. The ship, it's appearing, simultaneously near Jex Prime and the orbital shipyards. Corex felt his world tilt sideways. Impossible. No vessel can be in 3 places at once. Sir, we have visual confirmation from all 3 locations. The same ship, identical energy signatures, all appearing at exactly the same time. The Admiral stared at the displays showing 3 different star systems, each with the mysterious vessel hovering ominously in space. His mind raced through possibilities, holographic projections, multiple ships with identical designs, some kind of dimensional technology beyond their understanding. All of them were terrifying options. Analysis of the ship's capabilities? Corex? Demanded Chief Science Officer Mektal looked up from his workstation, his multiple eyes blinking in confusion. Admiral, according to our sensors, the vessel doesn't exist. No mass readings, no energy signatures, no gravitational disturbance. Yet it's clearly there, affecting our systems in ways we can't explain. How is it affecting our systems if it doesn't exist? That's the question, sir. Something is infiltrating our networks, but we can't trace the source. It's like fighting shadows. We know something is there, but we can't touch it. Across Imperial space, the mysterious attacks continued. On the mining world of Vextara, automated systems began extracting ore and launching it into space toward unknown coordinates. The fortress moon of Jeklon found its weapons systems turning on each other, firing harmlessly into the void before shutting down again. Trade ships reported their cargo holds opening randomly, spilling goods into space like offerings to invisible gods. But the most disturbing incidents were happening in the Empire's information networks. Classified military databases were being accessed by phantoms that left no trace. Personal files of high-ranking officials were being copied and transmitted to unknown destinations. Even the Emperor's private communications were being monitored by entities that simply didn't exist, according to their best detection equipment. Light years away, Captain Lee stood in the shadow-filled command center of the Teguk, watching his crew work with the precision of surgeons. The ship's quantum processors hummed with stolen Imperial data, analyzing everything from fleet movements to personal habits of enemy commanders. Kim, status report, Lee said quietly. Engineer Kim looked up from his console, where streams of intercepted data flowed like digital rivers. We've successfully infiltrated 70% of their primary networks, Captain. Their security is impressive, but they're still thinking in 3 dimensions while we're operating in 11. Phase shift generators. Operating at peak efficiency, we can maintain simultaneous presence in up to 15 different locations without strain. The Empire's sensors simply can't track something that exists in quantum superposition. Lieutenant, Park smiled grimly from her station. Their psychological profiles are fascinating, sir. Every system failure, every impossible sighting is driving them closer to panic. They're starting to question their own technology, their own senses. Lee nodded slowly. Fear was a weapon more powerful than any plasma cannon. The Empire had conquered through intimidation for centuries, but they had never experienced being on the receiving end. They were learning what it felt like to be hunted by something beyond their comprehension. Prepare for Phase 3, Lee commanded. It's time to introduce ourselves properly. In the depths of space, the ghosts in the machine prepared to become very real indeed. The moment began like any other, across the vast Zephyrian Empire. On the capital world of Zephyr Prime, citizens were going about their daily routines. Children attended learning centers while their parents worked in towering spires that reached toward the stars. Military officers reviewed tactical reports in secure bunkers buried deep beneath the planet's surface. Merchants haggled over prices in bustling markets that never slept. Then, every screen in the empire flickered. Not just the military displays or government communications, every single electronic surface capable of showing an image. Personal data pads, entertainment systems, advertising holograms floating above busy streets, even the massive public displays that dominated city centers. All of them went dark for exactly 3 seconds before displaying the same impossible image. A human male stood in what appeared to be a command center, but the technology behind him was unlike anything in Imperial databases. Walls seemed to breathe with organic light. Holographic displays showed star charts that moved in impossible dimensions, and strange geometric patterns pulsed with energy that hurt to look at directly. The human himself was unremarkable at first. Glance, average height, simple uniform, no obvious weapons or decorations. But his eyes held something that made every viewer instinctively step back from their screens. It was the look of a predator that had been watching, waiting, and was finally ready to strike. "I am Captain Lee of the Terran Reconnaissance Division." The figure spoke with quiet authority that somehow carried across the vastness of space to billions of listeners. His voice was calm, controlled, but underneath lay something that made hardened Imperial warriors feel suddenly very small. In the Imperial Command Center, Admiral Corex felt his blood turn to ice as the human continued speaking. Around him, his staff stood frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a message, it was a demonstration of power that defied everything they understood about technology. "We know what you are," Captain Lee continued, and suddenly the screen split to show detailed Imperial fleet positions. Every ship, every station, every secret military installation appeared in perfect detail. "We know what you've done." The display shifted again, showing classified operation, files that should have been impossible to access. The Veltaran genocide, the enslavement of the crystal beings of Sector, the systematic elimination of 17 different species, all displayed with horrifying accuracy. "We know your plans." Now the screen showed Imperial expansion routes, including classified target lists that only the highest members of High Command should have known. Colony worlds marked for Protocol Omega, resource extraction sites, population centers scheduled for elimination. Everything the Empire thought was secret laid bare for the galaxy to see. Admiral Corex's 4 hands trembled as he realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just a security breach. It was complete intelligence domination. The humans had been inside their systems for who knew how long, watching, learning, preparing. 17 species silenced. Billions enslaved or eliminated. Lee's voice never rose, never showed the anger that such words should carry. The calm delivery somehow made the accusation more terrifying than any shouted threat. "Your expansion toward our space ends now." Behind the human captain, glimpses of impossible technology flickered across the screen like fragments of a nightmare. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their hulls bending space around them like water. Weapons that appeared to be harvesting energy directly from stars, channeling stellar fire into forms that made Imperial plasma cannons look like children's toys. Engineering projects that spanned entire solar systems, constructing structures that made no sense according to known physics. But it was the ships that truly terrified those watching. Fleets beyond counting moved through what appeared to be folded space, traveling impossible distances in heartbeats. Some vessels were the size of moons, their surfaces covered in geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. Others were sleek and predatory, looking more grown than built, their hulls reflecting starlight in ways that suggested they existed partially outside normal space-time. "These are not the only worlds under our protection," Lee continued, and the display showed star systems across the galaxy, hundreds of them, all marked with the same strange geometric symbols. "We have been watching your species for 3 centuries. We have been patient. We have been thorough. We have been merciful." The word merciful, hung in the air like a blade. Every being watching suddenly understood that what they had witnessed, so far the system failures, the impossible ship sightings, the infiltration of their networks, had been restraint, not inability. "Admiral Corex," Lee said, and the camera seemed to focus directly on him, despite being broadcast across the entire empire. The human's eyes looked directly into his, as if seeing through space itself, through armor and flesh, straight into his soul. Around the command center, Corex's staff turned to stare at their commander with mixtures of awe and terror. How did this human know exactly where he was? How could he see him through secured military channels? "You have been chosen to represent your species in what comes next," Lee continued. "Coordinates follow this transmission. You will come alone. You will come unarmed. You will learn what happens when humanity decides a species has gone far enough." The display shifted one final time, showing spatial coordinates that placed the meeting point in neutral space, exactly halfway between Imperial territory and the mysterious region where their ships had been vanishing. It was a location that should have been empty, devoid of any strategic value. "You have 48 hours, Lee concluded. "Fail to appear, and you will learn why 17 species chose extinction over continued expansion into our space." The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving every screen in the Empire displaying normal content as if nothing had happened. But the silence that followed was deafening. In command centers, markets, homes and schools, billions of beings stood in stunned quiet, processing what they had just witnessed. In the Imperial Command Center, Admiral Corex slowly sank into his command chair, his mind reeling with implications. They weren't dealing with a new species seeking territory or resources. They had encountered something ancient, patient, and infinitely more dangerous than anything the Empire had faced in its 300-year history of conquest. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the depths of space, Captain Lee turned away from the camera as the transmission ended. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces grim with the knowledge of what would come next. The message had been delivered. Now came the reckoning. Admiral Corex's personal shuttle drifted through the void toward coordinates that shouldn't have contained anything but empty space. His scaled hands gripped the pilot controls with white-knuckled tension as he approached what appeared to be absolutely nothing. The veteran commander had faced pirates, rebels, and hostile alien fleets, but nothing had prepared him for this moment of supreme uncertainty. "Long-range sensors show clear space," reported his shuttle's computer in its emotionless, mechanical voice. "No contacts detected within scanning range." But Corex knew better. The humans had demonstrated technology that made Imperial science look like primitive cave paintings. If they wanted to remain hidden until the last possible moment, they would. Then, reality began to change. Space itself seemed to ripple like water disturbed by an unseen stone. Stars shifted position, their light bending in impossible ways as something massive began to materialize. The void tore open like fabric, revealing glimpses of another dimension where different laws of physics applied. Through this tear, something emerged that redefined Corex's understanding of what a starship could be. The human vessel didn't so much appear as unfold into existence. Its hull seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, surfaces flowing and shifting as they settled into forms that three-dimensional minds could barely process. The ship was easily 10 times larger than the Empire's greatest dreadnought, but its size wasn't what made Corex's four hearts skip beats. It was the casual way it treated the fundamental forces of the universe. Gravity flowed around the vessel, like a visible river, bending starlight into artistic patterns. Energy cascaded along its hull in waves of color that had no names in any Imperial language. The ship's engines, if they could be called that, seemed to be drinking energy directly from the quantum foam of space itself. "Incoming transmission," his shuttle's computer announced, though Corex hadn't detected any signal. "Admiral Corex," came Captain Lee's calm voice through speakers that shouldn't have been able to receive the transmission. "Welcome. Prepare for transport." Before Corex could respond, his shuttle began moving without any input from its engines. The craft was being drawn toward the human vessel through some form of tractor technology that produced no detectable energy signature. But as they approached, Corex realized the ship wasn't just pulling his shuttle. It was pulling the space his shuttle occupied, carrying him forward in a bubble of altered reality. The docking process defied everything Corex understood about engineering. Instead of entering through an airlock, his shuttle simply phased through the human ship's hull as if it were made of light. One moment he was in open space, the next he found himself in a docking bay that was impossibly larger than the vessel that contained it. The bay itself was a work of art that hurt to contemplate. Walls curved through dimensions that shouldn't exist, creating surfaces that appeared both infinitely distant and close enough to touch. Gravity flowed in streams and pools, allowing maintenance crews to walk on walls and ceilings as easily as floors. The humans working in the bay moved with casual confidence through an environment that would have driven Imperial engineers insane. "This way, Admiral," said a human female who had appeared beside his shuttle without him noticing her approach. She was young, wearing the same simple uniform as Captain Lee, but her eyes held the same predatory intelligence that had haunted Imperial nightmares for weeks. As they walked through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves around their passage, Corex found himself in what could only be called a conference room, though its geometry challenged sanity. The walls curved in directions that didn't exist, creating spaces that were somehow both intimate and vast. Stars were visible through transparent sections that might have been windows or might have been direct holes in reality. Captain Lee stood, waiting, his back to displays that showed the true scope of human civilization. Behind him, Lieutenant Park and Engineer Kim worked at consoles that appeared to be grown rather than built, their surfaces responding to touch with organic fluidity. "You've been watching us," Corex managed to say, the words feeling inadequate, in this place where normal rules didn't apply. "For centuries," Lee confirmed, turning to face his guest. "Your species emerged from your homeworld 300 years ago, full of confidence and conquest. We were already ancient when your ancestors first looked at the stars and wondered what lay beyond their reach." The displays behind him shifted, showing star charts that spanned the galaxy. Thousands of systems marked with human symbols, connected by travel routes that ignored the normal limitations of space and time. Fleets beyond counting moved through these networks, not just ships, but mobile habitats, orbital cities, and structures that existed partially in dimensions the Empire couldn't even detect. "Your species isn't the first to believe conquest was." "Their natural right," Lee continued, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "We've watched 17 different civilizations follow the same path. Some learned wisdom, others chose extinction rather than change their ways." Engineer Kim activated another display, showing the graveyard systems where aggressive species had once thrived. Shattered worlds orbited dead stars, their civilizations reduced to archaeological curiosities after they refused to find another path. "But you are the first to threaten worlds under our direct protection," Lee said, and suddenly the casual friendliness in his voice vanished. "Colonies where our children live, worlds where our families have built new homes among the stars." The displays showed human settlements scattered across the galaxy, not the primitive outposts the Empire had expected, but thriving worlds where technology and nature existed in perfect harmony. Cities that floated in clouds of impossible beauty, orbital habitats that contained entire ecosystems, underwater colonies, where humans swam alongside alien creatures in perfect peace. "We are older than your Empire, Admiral. We are patient, we are thorough, and we are done hiding." Lieutenant Park activated a new display showing weapons that made Imperial plasma cannons look like thrown rocks, stellar engineering projects that could move stars like chess pieces, ships the size of moons that existed in fleets numbering in the millions, technology that treated the laws of physics as polite suggestions rather than absolute rules. "Your empire ends here," Lee said simply. "Not through conquest or destruction, through irrelevance. You can choose to find another direction for your species, or you can join the 17 others who thought they were apex predators." Corex felt his worldview crumbling as he stared at evidence of a civilization that made his empire look like children playing with wooden toys. These humans hadn't just been watching, They had been preparing for this moment for centuries, building towards a revelation that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. "Your shuttle is ready," Lee said, gesturing toward the corridor, through which Corex had entered. "Return to your leaders, tell them what you've seen, give them our message, find another direction." As Corex was escorted back through corridors that bent space around them, his mind struggled to process the implications. The Empire hadn't encountered a new species. They had awakened something that had been content to remain in the shadows. Something that made their greatest achievements look like prehistoric cave paintings. His shuttle was returned to normal space, the same way it had entered, through a casual demonstration of technology that redefined possible. As he engaged his hyperspace engines and fled toward Imperial territory, Corex carried with him the knowledge that everything had changed. The Taeguk watched his shuttle disappear into hyperspace, carrying humanity's simple ultimatum back to an empire that suddenly realized it was no longer the apex predator in their galaxy. Captain Lee turned to his crew as the alien vessel vanished into the distance. "Signal the fleet. If they choose. Poorly we end this." Around them, the bridge hummed with quiet efficiency as orders were transmitted to forces beyond counting. The Watchers had become the warriors, and the Empire's age of expansion was over. In the depths of space, humanity's patient vigil had ended. The galaxy would never be the same. The end.